Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison.
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have one of our honorees with us today, David O'Brien from Sydney, Australia. 5 a.m. for Steve Monatonis, 10 p.m. for David, and I'm in the middle. David, say hello to everyone.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to some.
David, tell everybody about your early swimming time, your career. We kind of see you appearing at the 1991 World Championships in Perth and coming away with a bronze medal. It's not clear to me you got wet before that, but I suspect you did.
Yeah, I've had an interesting career leading up to that point, and it's funny because I've nearly had two sporting careers prior to that point. I swam competitively in the pool from the age of 8 onwards, and was racing 12, 14-year-olds at that age, and then went through a stellar sort of swimming career there, and managed to do well in the junior Australian age championships, and 2 400s, and got into the longer distances. And so I continued with my pool swimming career through to 85, and that was the Australia Games, which became the Pan Pacific Games, and I was in the Australian team, the Australian pool swimming team, in the 200 and 400 freestyle. That was in 85. And it was good because it was sort of the end of a pool career. Well, okay, I've achieved that. What now? And at the same token, a lot of swimmers here in Australia at the time were doing a lot of pool swimming and surf lifesaving and surf swimming. So I then sort of focused on surf lifesaving then for 3 to 4 years, and then represented Australia in surf lifesaving in '89, having after won a few Australian titles in surf lifesaving. And I thought, well, okay, what next? What do I want to do? I still feel I've got some swimming left in me, and I want to keep training, and I really enjoy what I do. And I'll stress this again, it's very easy to do something you enjoy, and I had a reasonable amount of talent at it, and I thought, well, distance swimming sounds good. And a friend of mine, John Curry, used to run the Australian Championships at Manly Dam, and he said, have you ever thought about doing distance swimming? I thought, well, how far is it? He said, we've got a 15K championship. Do you want to have a crack at that? I'm thinking, 15K, it sounds like a long way, mate. I don't train that far and I don't swim that far normally, but I'll have a go. And that was in 1990. And I went in it and had a great time, and was fortunate to do well there, and thought, what, if I actually train for this and fair dinkum set myself some goals here, we'll see how we go. And the next year was 91. I made the Australian team, and then I went on to the world. So it's progressed sort of slowly through a pool swimming background into a surf lifesaving background, which kept my interest. And then distance swimming came up and said, wow, this is fantastic. Look at this. What a great sport. I love it. And I was hooked from then on. From 1990, I got John Curry to thank for that one.
Did you know any of the personalities in the 1991 World Championships? It's kind of little before Google time, or you just show up and they went, oh, this guy's named Chad and this is, Bob. And did you have a scouting report?
Look, I did a bit of homework on who was swimming, and we had a guy called Jay Wilkinson who was swimming in the US team, and he came out and swam in our Australian trials at the end of 1990. And he was pretty quick initially in the 25K, and he was a good swimmer. And Sid Cassidy was his handler, and that's when I first met Sid. It was in 1990 in November in Perth. And it's funny, relationships and people you meet over the years. 30 years later, you're still talking to them and you're still mates. And whilst you might live in different areas of the world, we still keep in touch. And it's good to see someone like him still contributing to the sport as he did back then. But Jay Wilkinson was my sort of first introduction to distance swimming internationally for competitors. And he swam well, and I managed to beat him in the trial. And I thought, if I really train hard for this, I can make an Australian team and perhaps do well internationally, not knowing anything about the international competition or how good they were.
You were part of what I refer to as the kind of great Australian marathon group in the 90s. And you looked pretty dominant yourself from about 91 until Grant Robinson started to appear about 97. Were there others domestically that were challenging you? And if not, how did you stay on top domestically for so long?
Well, I was really fortunate because domestically in Australia, we had a lot of potential swimmers that came from pool across to open water and marathon swimming, and they were very fast. And I was fortunate back in my pool days, I had a lot of natural speed. So that helped me a lot over the years when, lot younger guys than me were coming up and threading the title. But look, I used each season as a momentum for me to keep going and continue through. And it was fortunate that I had a work environment that supported me, and I was enabled me to train, a lot more distance and put the more time into the training. And at the time, in 91, 90, pretty much from 91 through to 95, I was putting in some fairly big miles per week. And had access and time to do that because I was working shift work. So it's funny because when 92, 93, 94, we went on the circuit and went on with all these other international competitors. And I actually held down a full-time job. I was working 44 hours a week and still training 70 or 80 Ks a week. But the fortunate thing is that work gave me the platform to get away because it was Qantas. I had access to travel and they were very, very good to me over the years to enable me to get over there and compete. So I had everything going for me. So I took advantage of that. And it's something that you look back on now fondly. And it's not too many employers that would give you that extra time to compete and train, but also have the advantage of shift work. And you get a full shift done from 6 till 2 p.m., go home and you got all afternoon to train. It was fantastic. So I took advantage of that.
You had great success in Rottnest, winning 4 or 5 years in a row, whatever it was. The very famous victory, Capri Naples, and competed in the World Championships. Contrast those 3 events.
Rottnest Island was a challenge in itself. It was a magnificent swim because every crossing was different. Weather was different, waves were different, marine life was different, ships were different, competitors got very, very competitive. And it was just a personal thing for me. Again, John Curry encouraged me to go and have a look at this swim and go over there. And again, using my airline background to travel and be able to travel, a weekend away it's a good weekend to go over and compete. The Rottnest was a favourite of mine because I used that. It was always in early February, so I used that as a lead up to March for the Australian Championships. And that gave me a bit of a gauge on how I was training and swimming at the time. And then, of course, in the Australian Championships, they picked teams to go away to then Capri Naples. And the Capri Naples swim was pretty competitive, and I knew that was the former World Championship event. And professional circuit swimming just had sort of kicked off back then. And there was a point system introduced, and it sort of wasn't known as the World Championship. But there's guys like Diego Degano, and I was very fortunate because I came into the sport at the time when all these magnificent swimmers were competing and doing well, and I had something, a benchmark to aim at and go after. So the Rottnest swim was a favourite. That was a lead up to our Australian Championships in March usually, and then that led into the Northern Summer. June, July competition scenario with all the FINA, and not so much the FINA, but the other events like Capri Naples. So I think the Capri Naples was a favourite because at the time, the first year I did it, I blew up in the swim, and I thought, man, this water was just so hot. I just I didn't do any good at all, and someone said to me at the time after the race, you got to work at these things, mate. You can't just turn up and think you can swim them off the top of your head. And I think, well, there was some truth in that. And I went back and took that back, and 91 came back and then said, there you go. How's that for a dedicated 12-month effort? And and the person that said it was, yeah, mate, I'll take my hat off to you. You certainly stuck it to me that day.
But compare those events. Did you do different training? Did you do different tapers? What was your mindset like? Did you have a different strategy?
Well, the Capri Naples was interesting because it was more international, whereas Rottnest was more just a domestic. It was only a domestic event. We didn't get too many international competitors come over, unlike today where they seem to come from everywhere. But Capri was a great swim because there was always a swim in Italy before it or after it. So what I used to do is set that in the program and then work my program towards Capri. So I would use the events the week before as a lead up to the Capri Naples swim and the swims. And that was a good way to not only just taper, but a lot of the events before were speed events and shorter ones too. When I say speed and short, a lot of them were like a criterion events. They had 3, 5, 8, 9K events, like all one a day for 5 days, that sort of thing. So I use that as a lot of speed training, a lot of sprint training, and use that as part of a taper training before Capri. Whereas you couldn't do that with the domestic swims like Rottnest. Rottnest was a very challenging swim. Capri was a challenging swim also, 2 different realms, 2 different lengths. you got 20K versus 33. But the training regime stayed the same. I pretty much trained the same way every day, the whole time of my career. And it was because I was working and, balancing the two. And I think that was the secret to it, and it worked. It was, whilst it was working, I wasn't going to change the formula for that. But I was looking for new swims to go and race in and do whilst overseas as well. Again, using that platform of airlines to get there.
And when you did Rottnest, were you so focused on your training, you finished the swim, got on the boat home, or did you stop at that giant bar and have a beer or two?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because one year we didn't really know much about what went on afterwards after the event had finished. And we sort of finished the race and they said, oh yeah, thanks very much, there's your envelope. And then the trophy and the presentation was a little bit later, and we jumped the boat and came home. And then it was down to a mate's place, and I flew home, that night, because I had work commitments the following day, and we're pretty busy at work. So, but when I realised that, hang on a sec, that bar's looking pretty good, and I might just have to pop in there and have a couple later. And there's always someone there to shout you if they knew that you'd won the swim as well. So we got to know quite a few people, and interesting people and characters that I met over the years at that swim too, and a lot of our professional soldiers that were based in that area also come and had a quiet chat on the side too, which was very interesting.
I guess not being an elite swimmer, I have the advantage in some respects. When I went to Rottnest, I spent a week afterwards on the island. So I really did it right.
Yeah, look, I try to spend as least amount of time in the water as possible, and more time on the land when you got there and enjoying the festivities. The unfortunate thing is that the presentation got later and later in the day because the event grew and grew, and it's ended up being like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, man, this isn't sustainable for someone who started this swim in the dark this morning, and especially if you're a bit run down and tired and a little bit dehydrated. We'll leave it at that. So.
You represented your country. I'm trying to think if it's 3 or 4 different events. We had the pool swimming, the surf marathon, and if I remember right from one late night, we were talking about the police and fire games a few years ago. What did it mean to you to represent your country? I read about the Australian pride. Is it the baggy green, or what's the expression? What did it mean to you?
Look, I think wearing your country's colours on an international stage, and no matter what sport you do, it's an achievement to be the representative in that event for your country. And I think with that comes a responsibility to give 150%. And I always gave 150% no matter what. And I think it's a personal thing. If you can portray a professional delivery on the day, and you don't always win, but you're certainly competitive and very tenacious. You had a bit of a reputation as an Aussie for being a bit of an underdog, a bit of a larrikin, but at the same token, if you wrestle crocodiles and get away with it, you're still alive, you must be half good. So they had a bit of respect for the Australian swimmers on the circuit. We were very competitive, but also very professional. And I think when you can wear those colours overseas and represent your country like that, it's sort of at the pinnacle of your sport, to represent your country and be an ambassador for who we are as people, but also a good sport as well. Shake hands and have and catch up afterwards, And I think that's part of the whole package of sport. It's not just that competing and on the day it's different. You do your race and you do your best you can. And if you've done the preparation, it all goes well, you have a successful result, whatever that may be, and for whatever goal you set. But I think as an Aussie and as a proud Australian, being fortunate, and I was fortunate that I was the first to represent in 3 different disciplines in swimming, that in the pool, in surf lifesaving, and in open water. So I'm pretty humble about that, and I think it's a great opportunity that I took, and I was professional in all 3 disciplines as well. So it's a pride thing. And it's not that you want to become a wonder from down under. It's just the fact that you go out there and a lot of people had a respect for you because of the person that you were, and also the country that you portray as well.
I want to set the stage for our viewers. Capri Naples. In the old days, Capri Naples was the world championship, and in 1989, a swimmer won it, world champion. 1990, another swimmer won it, world champion. The sport gets reorganized now in 1991's no longer the world championship, but those 2 guys who won the year before, they were still there. still had an incredible field. You took the win. Tell us about the atmosphere in Naples. Tell us about the party afterwards. Tell us about the Australian team. This must be a great memory for you.
Yeah, it was. It was a real good memory because the fact that literally I was the underdog, and having swam, you know, with guys that had been world champions, and they were there and they were still competitive and they were fast. That gave me the incentive to train hard and work hard and say, you know what, I can really do this, and I can actually, you know, I can do really well and be very, very competitive against these guys, and they're not going to expect that. They're not going to be there, and it's something that I took back and trained and worked really hard for. It was my first time to Capri and that part of Italy, so I really enjoyed that. I like the island atmosphere. I like the people. I like where we were swimming. I like the fact that it was open water and it got choppy, so that suited my style. Coming from a surf background, I like that rough water aspect. That suited me as well. I'd done the work. I don't get too tied up with, you know, reputations of, you know, I got a lot of respect for the other swimmers because they were very good, and even the title. Yeah, it was a world championship. I was fortunate to win it in '91, and I did that through tenacity and hard work. And there's a lot of hard work and hours that went behind that to get me there, and a lot of respect for the guys that were actually competing in that swim too. Having said that, it was great to win the event. And in true Italian style, at the presentation that evening, at the time we were sponsored by a well-known outfitter in Australia, and we had, you know, suits, ties, everything all given to us as part of the Australian swimming team for World Championships. So we had all that gear, and my handler had all that gear, and of course the Italians, being in true Italian style, we didn't know it at the time, but one of the very, very high people in government were there. The head of the Italian Navy was there, and the whole entourage was there. It was a very big social event. In fact, it was the biggest social event in Naples that they had every year at the Cioccolo del Stampa, where they used to hold it. We didn't know that, of course, but fortunate for us, we turned up as the victors of the swim, and also won the crowd by the fact that we were dressed appropriately and accordingly, and it was bravo all around. And it was great because afterwards, of course, we had a few drinks with the various people that were there, and yeah, it was a rather large, long evening at the end of it, and we're very fortunate to meet some new people as well. So the girls seemed to like the fact that we had ties on. So they said, very unusual to see an Australian in a tie. I said, it's the first time I've worn it. And they're going, what? I said, no, just kidding. Second time.
David, you competed at the elite level in these races, but you also did a first ever solo, I'll call it traditional swim or epic swim, from a place called Cornell to Sydney at 33K. Why did you do it? How did it get organized? And how was it different than racing?
Well, that was a good swim because a bit of history with Australia, and originally discovered by James Cook in 1788. It was discovered where he stepped foot on, where he made landfall here in Sydney, was at Cornell, at the same spot. And I thought to myself, you know what, there's a big significance here. This country was founded at that very point, and there's a monument there accordingly. Wouldn't it be good? And via water, why don't we transverse it? No one's done it before. There's a 3-knot current coming against us, from north to south, so that the conditions won't be favourable. No one's done it before. So I got together with a mate of mine. I said, listen, I reckon we can do this. Why don't we build a shark cage? Because obviously there's some fair big critters out there. Anyway, we built this shark cage, and we were out trialling it, and the thing sank. So they built us another one, and it went half under as well. I said, listen, we're gonna do this swim. I want to do this swim. Why don't we have rescue divers next to us? I organised the whole thing. Had rescue divers, we had cruisers, we had everyone around us. We had support. Had a mate of mine at Channel 9 in the local news media, and that just went ballistic because all the helicopters came out in the end. And then we organised it, did our own media, and so, you know what, I want to do this because it was, in essence, it's a discovery to settlement marathon swim. It's never been done before. It was 33 and a bit Ks. It was 7 hours and 54 minutes. And it was probably one of the toughest swims I've ever done in relation to battling the elements. It was me versus the ocean. I had a good support, well-planned network of people there to help me in terms of everything went wrong. But, everything on the day went well. We came down Sydney Harbour, and you come through Sydney Heads and swim down Sydney Harbour, and finish at Opera House Steps, as you know, Sydney Cove, where they settled. So it had a dual purpose. One, it was a challenge for me because I set that challenge. I said, okay, I reckon I can do this, and everything's going to be against me. And there's a challenge. I've got the ability to do it. I'm going to have the training behind me to do it. There's a bit of, and I had some sponsors at the time, so I wanted to promote them and look after them. And we ended up breaking even, but that wasn't the point. The point was to do it and achieve something. It wasn't easy. It was difficult. So I was very fortunate to have reasonable conditions on the day, but that current was still flowing. And I had a really good support network of boats and people right around me, and it got a lot of coverage locally here in Sydney and around Australia. And no one's ever done it to this day. But it's a challenging swim that no one probably would. They'd go the other way because the current's with them, but they wouldn't swim against it. So we had to hug the shoreline, and when you see the shoreline of Sydney, it's magnificent with its sandstone cliffs, and the water was pretty clean. So it was one of those things that I probably wouldn't do it again. But once I'd done that, and I thought, that was a good challenge. We did it and proved to myself that I can do pretty much anything we set my mind to.
We have a list of honorees who've swum in shark cages. I think we're not going to put you on it, having sunk two of them and not used it in the end, David. You just haven't come up to that level yet.
Yeah, no, I always say one of the great whites bit the back end of my one out, the first one, and then it's just bad design, sunk the second one. But you know what? It's funny because we salvaged one of them, and one of them to this day is down at the local marina, and he turned it upside down and put a door in it. And that's his lock-up cage for all his gear, and it's still there. I kid you not. I take my kids past, and I say, yeah, we know, Dad. We drive our bikes past. There's a bike track that goes past the marina. I said, see that cage over there? Yeah, we know, Dad. Yeah, we know. Yeah, I built that cage. Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. So it came to some good use. At least someone got some use out of it anyway. But look, we did it without a cage, and I felt pretty safe doing that. And I had a good team of guys that knew the fish and knew the marine area and knew the area around there well. And we did all the preparation for it. So professionally, again, applying those sorts of things. I mean, there's always an element, but we were lucky that day, and everything went really well. It was good. It was a great swim, and one I'll never forget. It was a real challenge. It was difficult. It was choppy, and it was a real challenge. But I enjoyed that.
You were awarded an OAM in Australia, one of the very few in our sport to receive such an honor. Family, friends at a ceremony. Local boy finally makes good. Give us the day.
Well, it was magnificent because it was obviously to be nominated by your peers for contributions to not only your sport, and that's something I haven't sort of touched on much, but I had a swimming ability where I like the bigger the sea, the better. In terms of, I did a lot of community work. I did a lot of rescue work, and a lot of helicopter work, and offshore rescue and marine work. So I used my skills to help a lot of people, and that, it was recognised for partially my contribution using my swimming skills to my local community as well as my swimming achievements. So I was pretty humbled to receive that award, and it came out of the blue, so it was even better. But look, it was a surprise. We had a ceremony at Government House here in Sydney with the governor, and Excellency was magnificent. And her husband came up to me after. He said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I'm thinking, "No." And he said, "I swam with you in Maui Channel in 1985. You were our gun swimmer. We're the guy you threw in at the end to help us win that." And yeah, Mr. Wilson, yes, I remember you now. Yeah, it was good. And Dad said, "I can't take you anywhere without you knowing someone, And it's funny because that network's true with all, swimming, Qantas, whatever, fire brigade, whatever. You get to know a lot of network people through your sports. And I'm just a kid from Gymea who grew up in a working class suburb and had an ability to aim high and achieve. And it didn't happen the first time and didn't happen the second time, but you dust yourself off and have a go. And I think that award was just sort of capped off what it was. I had a sterling career in the pool, and I was really fortunate to be able to contribute some of those skills back to the community as well. And there's a lot of people around today that if I hadn't had those skills, they might not be here. So I feel pretty humbled to receive that. And the people in the network there really appreciated what I'd done. So it was good. It was a good day. My family were there, and my dad and mum, because they're old, they're nearly, they're 90. Dad's nearly 90, so they thought, it was well deserved, I think. And the governor quietly said, "No, I'm glad you got that." She said to me afterwards, "Yeah, it was good. It was a good, well deserved." So.
You have one of the more interesting jobs of any of our honorees. Tell us a little bit about it, put it into local context with some of the recent disasters in Australia. And if you can, tell us at least one funny story.
Look, I work in fire investigation and research unit, and our primary responsibility and job is to, in essence, put the jigsaws back together once the fires have occurred. So determine cause and origin is what the investigators are about, and the research we build and rebuild crime scenes. We put the jigsaw pieces back together. It's a really fascinating and interesting role that I'm involved in, and it's very, very time consuming. They're long days. And again, serving the Crown, so representing the state. We're professional in our delivery and how we do it. There's not too many people in Australia that specialise and do what we do, but we also have a canine unit as well. So we've got Labrador dogs. They're the only ones of their kind in the Southern Hemisphere. They're actually accelerant detection dogs. So it's a unit that's quite unique in its specialties: investigative research and canine detection. We work closely with the police. We work closely with most of the government agencies in this state and also around Australia, and we're sort of the go-to department and agency that people come to us to get answers, which is good because we're talking scientists, police, you name it. We get universities, we get people wanting to work with us and learn from us. So it's quite a unique and involved role and very technical. And it's funny because at the time I did all these courses years ago, and I thought to myself, why would electronics engineering, who wants to do that? Why would you ever do that? Well, you go and find a piece of a burnt component and go, yeah, well, I know exactly why I did that course, 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was, and it still helps you. So the message behind that is any education you get is never wasted. You never know when you may or may not use it. And I'm lucky that I've got a job where we've had a lot of jobs recently. We've still got a lot of jobs and a lot of work on. We work with all different government agencies and departments. So there's no one day that's the same, and there's no one location that's the same. So that's what I like about it. It's never boring, and it gives me an opportunity to also showcase your ability to help others indirectly. We write a lot of legislation as well behind the scenes, so we do a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well that no one sees, and that's what I like. We got an initiative just out of the ground, and I've lobbied on it for about 3.5, 4 years now. So when we turn up on scene, we know when electric vehicles are electric vehicles as opposed to being a regular car. We had number plate stickers and logos put on number plates. That's gone national now from what we started. And not only that, it's gone international. So my colleagues from other countries are now wanting to do it as well. So it's good that we can use our skills and do what we do to give back. And that's why I love my job. It's so easy to give back, and it's really enjoyable. And yeah, a funny story. We've got a couple of dogs that are supposed to do what they're supposed to do at various scenes. So if there's an accelerant detected, or if there's a chance there may have been an accelerant used in the burn patterns that remain, the dogs they have deployed, and of course they'll sit at the spot where that's what they're trained to do. We had one time where the dog did exactly that, but then he sat on the way out, and then he sat all the way out back to the car. And I said, "What's the matter, mate?" And I spoke to the handler. He said, "Yeah, he found a pie inside. He's been eating it on the way out. He's got half still in his mouth. Have a look." And the police were just roaring with laughter. And I said, "Yeah, this is going to go well. This will look really good in a report, So the dogs aren't always accurate, but they're known to like pies on the odd occasion. So that was a bit of a funny one. And because remember that the scenes that we attend and some of the stuff that we do, and a lot of stuff behind the scenes isn't what the public sees. So a bit of light humour is always fun, and it keeps the job interesting, but it keeps you level-headed as well, I think.
Well, David, I want to thank you very much for your time today. Nice to see you again, and hopefully we'll catch up in New York City in the spring.
Yeah, look, I hope we can, and I really hope that we get things moving again. And I say to I got a young daughter who's swimming, and they're very restricted about how they can swim and where and when. But if I can get a message out there to all the kids, just keep ploughing on and aiming for getting back in the water, and whilst we can't compete, just keep the maintenance going. It's as simple as that. Keep turning over. And that's what I say to my daughter. Just keep turning over. She's there's no meets to aim at because we don't know what's happening. So just keep turning over when you can. And it's winter now, so for us here, so the water's quite cool. So when it starts to warm up again, everyone will be back in the surf and swimming, and it's one of those sports that I encourage anyone of any age to get involved in, and it's never too late to do either. So keep going, and for the younger kids, keep training, and goals you'll be able to get your goals. We've just got a little bit of a readjustment going on at the moment. So I appreciate your time though.